Sophomore year of college was my first taste of what I imagined to be the rest of my life, urban ministry. During February of my junior year, I eagerly awaited an email from an urban ministry in Memphis called SOS. I was certain that I was going to Tennessee to change the world, or at least the city.
My junior year, I graduated from high school. That summer, at 17, I moved to New York City. My life stuffed tightly into two suitcases. But I didn't know how unprepared I was.
Very quickly after arriving in Tennessee, I was struck with the realization that I was not prepared physically, mentally, or more importantly, emotionally for what I was going to encounter those next 3 months.
In the next 3 months, I had been sleeping on a love seat in a tiny three-bedroom apartment above Wall Street. Eventually, I found a subleaser in Queens, and excited to actually live in a real room, I thought I was prepared for a new life.
I thought my life, as well as those 3 months, was going to be spent doing hard labor fixing homes and loving the people in the urban community. But by the first week of training, I became incredibly close to one of the other girls on staff.
The girls I worked with were nearly 6 years older than me. I couldn't connect with them, rehash stories of going out, or join in on jokes that I should have been laughing at. I was missing friends and family, and I missed the perfect geographic location of Kansas. The girls I worked with were nearly 6 years older than me. I couldn't connect with them, rehash stories of going out, or join in on jokes that I should have been laughing at. I was missing friends and my family, and I missed the perfect geographic location of Kansas. On a late 4 a.m. subway ride, on the W train going north towards my apartment, a homeless man began occupying a corner of the subway, building a house out of pieces of cardboard.
One night, I could see a dark cloud over us. I slid over a note to her, and with selfish hope, I just wanted to push her out of darkness. This night triggered something, and after a couple of weeks, she shared about the horrors from her past. Things I never imagined having to experience, and things I would never wish on even my worst enemies. Before this day, I had never believed God to work through people, and especially through me.
Staring at the man sleeping peacefully in a cardboard box, I realized my life had always been about me. But now, I didn't know what I was doing with my life or where I was going. I began counting down the days until I could visit Kansas. I started packing nearly 4 weeks in advance, and I would sit in my room, packing and repacking my suitcase, placing it perfectly in the closet until I would need it.
I never thought God needed me, or would use me as a vessel, although I knew that biblically God claimed that He did so. I frequently felt that He was rejecting me by speaking through others. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. I can't describe how out of character it was for me to write something so straightforward to her, but something inside of me drew me to it, and it was completely out of my power.
I felt completely devoid of power. I stayed nearly 4 weeks in Kansas. When my flight back to Manhattan was approaching, I kept telling myself that I didn't want to go back, that I couldn't go back. The flight to Chicago, I was quiet, numb almost. On the flight to New York, I was sobbing, much to the despair of the man sitting next to me on the plane. When the taxi dropped me in front of my apartment, I couldn't walk inside. I stood by the front entrance, scared, my heart seizing.
I feel like your heart is hardened. That's what the note read. I thought a lot about this moment we shared. There was something pulling at her, eating at her that I couldn't understand at the time. I thought back to moments when crude jokes were being made, and I could tell she was cringing. And that night was when the news of the abuse finally came out. For the first time in her life, she realized that she had been sexually abused by her father. I reached out and held her strongly, maternally. Her father was a pastor, a church planter, a head honcho in the church, and he was someone well known across the United States for his faith. Out of all the questioning I have done, this was the epitome of them all. Christians had failed me, and Christians had failed this girl who was now my little sister.
I dropped my bag on the floor of my apartment and stood in the center of the room, looking out the window at the sisters playing in the apartment across the street. I lasted 1 hour. 1 hour, and I bought a plane ticket and left for Kansas in the morning. When I returned home, I was bored and defensive, mostly of Kansas. People would talk about the nothingness that surrounded us, and I would lash out, upset that they would attack a place that had become my new salvation. I had some friends still, but I was left with stories I didn't want to tell, a city I couldn't talk about, and an experience I couldn't escape. I quickly ran to the small Methodist church I had grown up in for 16 years of my life. I became so involved in a family and community that needed me that I changed everything I had planned for myself. I turned to a God that didn't speak, a Bible I didn't read, and a hell I didn't believe in. This had become my family in a time that I needed them.
The family I gained in Memphis led me to who I am today. I thought I was sent to Memphis with the purpose of loving the community, but I was sent for something much different. I was being sent to care for someone who didn't know she was being sent there to change me. From this experience, I realized that God works, and that God loves, and that God is in control of our future. Before that summer, I had little faith in God, but acted the part out of duty. I wanted to call Christians out on their lies when they announced that God was speaking to them or leading them to do something. I just wanted to call the bluff on Christianity as a whole, but like I said before, God had other plans. On several occasions, the church had failed me, and her father had failed her. After painful amounts of silence, I heard God telling me that people cannot hold my faith, only He can. And for the first time, I knew that God had spoken to me, and that He had led me to write that note to her. This girl in Memphis will always be my little sister. She has my heart, and she is the reason I have faith.
As the year was ending, I was at the university, and I was tired and unsure. I dropped the notion of a God being someone who would save us all. Letting go of a God did not bring fear or confusion. Rather, I felt clarity. Pain replaced peace where religion was concerned, and all I could see was suffering. My mentor finally led me to my role to refugees torn apart by religious wars, unreasoned wars. I would help these people, judgment-free, persecution-free, religion-free. And while I have no religion, and I have no moral laws formed by religion to guide my life, I will respect the lives of others surrounding me. I do not know where my life will go from here, and I'm scared, but I'm also ready. If my life can be the salvation for others, I do not need a God to be present so that I feel secure that there is life after death.